Come on, church, we can celebrate that. That is great to see. That is amazing. Well, good morning. My name is Lance. I'm one of the pastors here at Timberlake. And today we are kicking off a brand new series, a collection of talks around the idea of blind spots. Blind spots, we all have them. There are things in our life that maybe we know are there, we just lose track of. Maybe we just never knew were there all along. And if we don't take them seriously, if we don't remind ourselves, if we don't learn about them, trouble will come. We will end up in a position that we never wanted to be in. We will merge into something that we had no business merging into. We will participate in things and we will have outcomes, we didn't desire. So the whole hope for the series, we're going to go through a number of different topics of blind spots that you and I face. These are universal things. So these aren't just a matter of like, hey, personality type or if this happens to you. It's when we run into these things and how we navigate them. It comes from a prayer we see in the Old Testament, the first half of our Bible, by this ancient king. His name was David. He prays this prayer that I think we all should be praying, but we don't pray that often. Here's the prayer that we see in Psalm 139. It says, "Search me, O God, know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you and lead me along the path of everlasting life." It's interesting how he breaks this down in two different ways. He starts with search me, test me, know my anxious thoughts. So God, get a landscape of everything that's happening in me. You see a lot of things that I don't see. It's a lot like a loving spouse. They see things in you that you don't see in yourself. Nobody's married, that's fine, that's cool. Search me, know me, test me. And when you do, when you get a landscape, can you do me a favor? Don't just keep it to yourself, but God, would you point it out in me? Not to make me feel terrible, not so we all know that we're a mistake or a failure. No, point it out in me, because when you do, when you help me see the blind spots, I can live in a way that's sustainable. I can live in a life that's everlasting. I can move forward and actually be successful, which is what you and I are all driving to. And if we don't do this process, if we don't ask God to find things, we're gonna face the consequences. It makes me think of a story that I came across in 2006. In 2006, there was a man in China named Li, and unfortunately, tragically, Li was robbed at knife point. Amidst the scuffle, Li was stabbed by a 4-inch blade right below the right side of his jaw. Stabbed right here. What a way to start church, right? He was stabbed right here, and miraculously, this is unbelievable, it dodged every major artery. It didn't hit his windpipe, and weirdly enough, he was able to recover without any big traumatic surgeries, nothing significant. Unfortunately, as you'd presume, for the following years, Lee struggled to swallow. His breathing was harsh. He reported a ton of headaches. And so he'd always go to the doctors for check-ins, and they would say, it's just a part of the consequence of what happened. It's the way that your body healed. It didn't heal back perfect. So you're faced with headaches, you're faced with breathing problems and swallowing problems, but hey, it could have been a lot worse. 4 years into this process of residual headaches and all these complications, he finally went to another doctor and said, hey, I need to know what else we can do. So, past just the peripheral looks, they decided we're gonna do an x-ray and see what we can find. You can't make up stories like this. This is unbelievable. They did an x-ray and they found out the assailant's knife had actually broken off inside of his head and remained there. Gross, right? Had remained there, so a 4-inch blade was stuck inside of his head. And they said, well, good news, we know why you have headaches. Like that's, we figured that part out at least. We know what's happening inside of it. And they were able to go in, this is a miracle. It had dodged every major structure. They were going, remove the blade, and wouldn't you know it, headaches went away. Headaches went away, breathing got way better, swallowing had totally recovered, and it's all because they investigated things that you didn't see on the surface, which leads to a really complicated and gross way to say why we're doing this series, to look for things that are not on the surface. In today's blind spot, I don't know if I got this one because I struggle with this one, I don't know what it is, but I know this is a universal. It comes for us in different ways, but it comes for all of us. Today's blind spot is cynicism. Cynicism. It comes for all of us. And here's the thing. Some messages we have to start with really zooming out and why this is important to you, help you feel included in it. Come on. I don't have to explain that much that we all have a cynical heart. That there's moments in our life where we look to things and we think, I don't know if I buy that. I don't know if I believe it. It can be small things, like when someone comes to me and they say, hey, I have this new restaurant, you have to try it, it's gonna be your favorite thing. I'm like, maybe. When someone says like, hey, this show or this book, it's gonna be your absolute favorite, you're gonna be obsessed with it like I am, and I'm like, well, we'll see. Unless it's Frasier and you found that again, like I don't know if that's gonna be, no Frasier fans? Okay, great. I don't know what it's gonna be, but it's probably not for me. It comes in little ways and it comes for big ways too, if I can be really honest. Sometimes I can get cynical in inappropriate moments. I'm a pastor. And I have the privilege of doing like a lot of weddings, just a lot of them. I absolutely love doing them. I don't do as many anymore. And it's always usually the same. It's adorable. She's standing right here. She looks beautiful. He cleaned up okay. You know, like we get here and he like barely made it. And we get here and we say some really cute things and everyone's dressed nice and it's like these cute moments. We exchange some rings. And my favorite part is when they do their own vows. Like when they decide like, hey, I'm gonna do my vow to each other. And I have to like hold in rolling my eyes during their vows, if I'm just being really honest with you. Like sometimes they'll get there and he'll say like, hey, I just want you to know that every morning I'm gonna go to Starbucks and get your coffee order. And every morning I'm gonna hold eye contact with you for 40 minutes before I go to work. And I'm like, no, you're not. Like you're just on it. Stop, you're lying. Everybody like, boo. No, you just can't, like, you can't boo at a wedding. And she like looks at him and says like, hey, I want to be passionate about all the things you're passionate about. Like I'm gonna care about your fantasy football team just as much as you do. And you're like, no, you won't. And like, please don't. Like don't do that. Don't promise these things. And in big ways, little ways, we all get cynical over time. And I don't need to explain it to you. I don't need to look to the stats, but I will. We've all felt it in the media. We've all felt it at work. You've all felt it in your own personal life. You've felt it at the dinner table. You've felt cynicism creep in to our culture. And stats will prove that too. Some recent stats say this: 58% of Americans now believe the country's best days are behind us. Bummer. 63% express doubt about the future of the nation's ethical values. I mean, come on, you go into that student ministry over there, you believe it. And only 30% of Americans say they trust people, down from 50% in the 1970s. Look around, so many of you are untrustworthy. Like this is it. A sketchy group here. 72, this one was amazing, 72% of Americans say they are less hopeful about the future now than they were before the pandemic. 72%. That's a large percentage. Say they are less hopeful about the future now than they have been before. Cynicism has taken root for all of us, and none of us intended to be here. Nobody charted the course early in life. You say, you know what I want to be? Rich and cynical. Like, that's what I want to be. Like, no, that's not it. Nobody set the course for cynicism. A great author that I love to follow, he wrote this on this topic. He said, his name's Carey Nieuwhof. You never thought you'd be a cynic, did you? It's not like your sophomore year of high school, beside your yearbook photo, you wrote this. It's not like you wrote, I hope to grow jaded and distrustful of humanity by the time I hit 40. I'm also hoping that my cynicism will damage my family and make me impossible to work with. Like, that's just... But here we are. Here we are. We struggle with it. We all are facing it. And to try and boil down a baseline definition that we can all play ball with today, it doesn't cover everything, but I think it covers enough. Cynicism is the decision to stop hoping, trusting, and believing. It's the decision that you and I make. And the good news is it's a decision. The good news is that we have a say in it. You're not predisposed and stuck with your cynical heart, but a decision has been made to stop hoping, trusting, and believing for something better. You take your thoughts, you project them into the future, and you think it is not gonna go well. No wonder rates of anxiety are at all-time high. No wonder people feel depressed and hopeless about the future when they look ahead and decided that hoping, trusting, and believing is just a waste of time. Now, some people, an argument can be made that cynicism is just a disposition. It's a way that you're born. It's your personality type. You're just a cynical person. For most people, I believe that could be true. But here's what I really believe about cynicism. I believe cynics are born out of the most hopeful and optimistic people that have been disappointed by life. That the more hopeful and optimistic you have been, disappointment will swing you harder into cynicism. The people that are pretty apathetic and neutral actually aren't the cynical ones. They don't get that excited. They actually don't get that sad. They just kind of sit in the Switzerland middle where they don't feel much. Like, they just kind of sit here. But the people with vision, with goals, dreams, and desires, people like you, are susceptible for cynicism to take root because life and its inevitable disappointments will swing us into what we consider realists. It'll swing us into thinking, come on, I've just seen enough. I've been through enough. I've discovered enough that if you knew what I've been through, you would be cynical too. And my guess is you're probably right. It's just not the person you want to be. And it is, I'll just warn you, it's having a bigger impact on you and your relationships than you think it is, which is why we're going to cover it as a blind spot. What I love about the Bible is it tells us stories. It tells us a lot of stories of human nature and the fact that the things we struggle with really aren't just unique to us because of where we're at in history. They have really been just a part of human nature to begin with. And so we see this idea of cynicism take root in a lot of different places, but one that I want to talk about today comes from one of the core disciples, followers of Jesus, one of the 12 who got this backstage pass, kind of this all-access pass to Jesus, and they got to travel with him everywhere. They heard all of his teachings. They saw all the miracles. They were a part of all of it. One of these 12 is a case study for what I'm proposing today. His name is Thomas. Now, Thomas only gets included in one book of the Bible. I mean, he's one of the core 12. He gets one book of the Bible. There's 4 books of the Bible that describe Jesus' life and history: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. John is the only one that even gives him speaking lines, and he gets 3 of them. So today we're going to go quickly through his 3 speaking lines and see his fall from excitement, enthusiasm, and faith all the way to cynicism. You guys ready? Yeah, it's a cynical crowd. Yeah, it's perfect. That's just for you. I set you up on that one, didn't I? Here we go. So first, this is where we start. I'm going to set the scene a little bit. We're in the book of John. We see Jesus. He's gathered his disciples. He's already got a crowd. He's performed some miracles. He's done some incredible teachings. And his teachings are either well-received and people follow him, or they hate it. It's pretty polarizing. And so Jesus, a lot of his teachings didn't land well. People wanted to arrest him, persecute him, throw him away, get him out of town. This is one of those examples. He was in Judea, and they wanted to arrest him. They wanted to persecute him. They ultimately wanted to kill him. And so they fled town. Fast forward a few days later, and Jesus says, let's go back to Judea and see how things are handling. His disciples said, that's a horrible idea. Like, I don't want to do that. They just tried to kill us. And that's where we catch up in our story. But the disciples objected. Rabbi, only a few days ago, the people in Judea were trying to stone you. That's like the bad kind of stoning. There's a negative type of, that's funny. Bad times, that's a Bible joke, right? That's awful. Only in Washington. Stone you. Oh, the West Coast, whatever. Are you going there again? Like, I mean, come on, this doesn't make any sense. Jesus, just to remind you, a little scope, a little history. I know you do all the snazzy miracles, but like, they just tried to kill you a minute ago here. So probably not a great course of action to go back into the lion's den. After a little bit of back and forth, Jesus essentially says, guys, you got to trust me. You got to trust me. This is where we're going. And this is where Thomas gets his first speaking line. You ready for this? This is the first time we see Thomas speak. Thomas, nicknamed the twin, said to his fellow disciples, let's go too and die with Jesus. How great is that? I'm a sarcastic guy, so I read that with just the biggest tongue-in-cheek, dry humor, like, sure. Hey guys, let's go die with Jesus. Great idea. He said it loud enough for Jesus to hear. Like, yeah, this is a really good idea. And we read it as sarcastic, but I think we've kind of injected a bit of ourselves into that. I don't know if Thomas is actually being sarcastic, but John really tries to portray him as a character of faith. That it may seem like he's voicing criticism, but he's actually voicing commitment. And Thomas is not voicing criticism. He's voicing a level of commitment. He's saying, Jesus, if you want to go there, I'll go too, even if it means we're dying. Even if it means things go poorly. Even if it means things are horrible, I want to be on board. And let me just tell you, that's the kind of faith I wish I had. Jesus, things are going sideways. I don't see how it's going to work, but I'm going to trust you regardless. That's admirable. That's noble. I don't have that version of faith. But what we see here is the beginning, is the root of this passion. Because this is true. Cynicism often starts in the hearts of those who care the most. Cynicism starts in the hearts of those who care the most. Remember the last time you were hopeful, passionate, and committed? Do you remember your 5th birthday? Like, do you remember like those moments, right? Where anything was possible. We can take on the world. I could be an astronaut if I wanted to. Sure, I get motion sick, but who cares? It'll be fine. Like, I could do anything. NBA, NFL, they're calling my name, but the Lord has called me to ministry. You know, it's just the way it works. Anything was possible. But here's what we see is over time, that desire to see the best can erode away. You've experienced it too. Second time that we see Thomas burst on the scene is Jesus is doing one of his reflective, contemplative talks about what heaven and the kingdom of God could look like. And it was a little bit confusing. It's clear now that we have time to see the scope of history, but in the moment, it was so cryptic, it didn't make a lot of sense. So this is where we catch up. Jesus teaching some of his disciples, and it says this: "Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me. There is more than enough room in my Father's home. If this were not so, I would have told you, or if this is not so, would I have told you that I am going to prepare a place for you? When everything is ready, I will come and get you so that you will always be with me where I am, and you know the way to where I'm going." That's what I love. Jesus ends with a definitive and clear statement, a very presumptive close of their intelligence and awareness of what's happening. It's a dangerous statement here. Jesus says, "And surely you know where I'm going to go, right?" And they all like nod and look at each other like, "No, I don't know actually what Jesus is talking about. I have no idea where you're going and what you're speaking of." It makes me think, the other night, I got to sneak away for a date night with my wife. We went to where the Lord shows up, the Matador in Redmond, and right? Yeah, you guys know. And we had this just quick little window for dinner, and we were both coming from work, so we kind of meet there. I got there before her, got us a little table, got us a little chips and salsa, all was good in the world. And she called me, she said, "Hey, I'm kind of stuck in traffic. It's gonna be later than I expected." I said, "Hey, do you want me to, come on, you've been here before. Do you want me to put in your order here at the Matador so we can get you set up? You can just show up and food will be ready." It was so thoughtful. And what was so good turned so bad with one sentence where she goes, "That would be perfect. You know what I like, just order." I said, "Sweetheart, this feels like a game I'm gonna lose." I love you. Like in that moment, I thought, I'm like, have I ever seen her eat before? I don't know. I was second guessing everything. I'm like, should I go to a different restaurant? Like, is this a hint? Like, I don't even know what food is anymore. Like, does she want pretzels? I'll go to the store. I don't know. Everything was a blank because she was so confident I knew the answer. And the disciples, in the same way, Jesus is like, "You know what to order?" And they go, "Nope, we don't." So Thomas is the only one who built up the courage to actually push back with Jesus, to actually ask a question. Everyone else was just willing to nod along. And Thomas, I just love his faith so much. He says, "No, we don't know, Lord." Yeah, I'm just gonna admit, I zero idea what's happening here. So Lord, we have no idea where you're going. So how can we know the way? I'm not tracking, but if you got a map or even just a rough drawing in the sand, that would help us because we have no idea where you're going. And Jesus responds to Thomas's question with one of the greatest declarations of his intention, why he's here, and his identity, all because Thomas asked the question. Jesus told him, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really know me, you would know who my Father is. From now on, you do know him and have seen him in me." Thomas, thank you for asking this clarifying question. And from here, I'm going to give you the greatest identity statement that churches will fall back on and will be a central pillar and foundation to the Christian faith from now on. Why? Because you are willing to ask a question. Why? Because Thomas, he's not doubting the truth. He's desiring the truth. Thomas is not doubting whether or not he's God. He's just saying, "No, I want to be so sure of where you're going. I don't want to miss it. I know how fallible I can be. I know I don't take subtlety well. I need you to be clear with your intentions." I just saved somebody's marriage. You need to be clear with your intention. Know your own order. Sorry, this is just like personal preaching here. But he's not doubting the truth. He's hoping to desire. He's discovering it. So the two times we see Thomas so far, he's willing to follow Jesus to death and willing to ask the uncomfortable questions because he so badly wants to know the truth of God. This is the type of person I want to be. This is the type of faith I want to have, which leads us to the point of like, all right, where's the cynic? Where's the skeptic? But what happens is this swing of disappointment. Some of you may not know the ending to this story, so I don't want to spoil it, but I promise it ends up okay. Jesus, ultimately, after all of his teaching, is betrayed, arrested, and killed, crucified on a cross. Good news is, 3 days later, he rises again. And as we continue in the story, we have so much faith invested through all these disciples. They're so ready to invest everything in Jesus, Thomas included. And The disappointment to see him crucified on a cross is unimaginable. The direction of their life is gone. They had quit everything to begin to follow him. They knew in their own minds where this was leading, and then it ended up nowhere close. Can you resonate with that? Can you be at a place where you thought you knew where God was leading and you ended up nowhere close? Well, Thomas can. The disciples, after Jesus had resurrected, he goes on this media tour where he starts seeing all these different people and connecting with these different groups. He even shows up to his core disciples again inside of a locked house. It's unbelievable. He just kind of shows up like Jesus can do. It's this holy breaking and entering. It's awesome. And he shows up to his disciples, but Thomas, we don't know where. Thomas was out getting groceries. He was somewhere else. And so these disciples were all together. Jesus shows up. They are abuzz. They are going crazy. Thomas shows back up. And the way that John, the author of this gospel, has framed it so far, you're thinking, of anybody who to be gone, Thomas is probably a great one. He's got faith regardless. He's ready to follow Jesus to death. If there's anybody who could have missed Jesus showing up in person but still have faith, it's probably Thomas. But here's what Thomas says. I won't believe it unless I see the nail wounds in his hands, put my fingers into them, and place my hand into the wound on his side. I saw my hope killed on a cross, and I'm done believing. I am done with naivety. I am done trusting. I am done with that. I've just been hurt too much. I've experienced too much. And I can't say no to my history, and so my history will inform my future, and this is the way it's going to be. Remember our definition of cynicism? It's the decision to stop hoping, trusting, and believing. And this is where we find Thomas. Making the declaration decision to stop hoping, trusting, or believing. You want to know what's crazy? It's actually justified. Makes a lot of sense. I don't think Thomas is in the wrong here. I think he experienced some things and he made some right assertions about the way he thought life was going to go. Jesus died, he's going to stay dead. Hope is gone, it will stay gone, which is why for, say, women in the room, maybe you've dated so many men. You've tried so many things and it all turns out the same. They're selfish. They make poor choices. They're rude. They say things horrible. And so you've decided men just can't be trusted. And it's justified. That maybe for some of you, you've just seen too many hard things. I think of police officers who day in and day out respond to people on their worst day and at their worst. And it's only natural that they would start to think, this is what all of humanity is like. That people are just rotten. Maybe it's the person who attended church time and time again and got in a group and tried to get to know people and found out that they were hypocritical or they gossiped or they were rude. And you're thinking, I thought the church would be different. These people say that they followed Jesus. And because of that experience, you've walked away from religion. You've said I'm all done. And you've said all of that is just a hoax. It is no different than the world. And to be honest, it seems pretty justified. To the person who committed years or decades at a job, was faithful to a company, put their blood, sweat, and tears, extra hours that nobody knew about, every bit of their passion into an organization, and then times got tough and they got laid off and they're thinking to themselves, I'm never gonna try at a job again. So careers just can't be trusted. Organizations are only out for one thing, and so I'm never gonna give it my full heart again. And listen, it makes sense. And if you told me your story, and if you told me your history, your cynicism wouldn't be just funny and jokes about TV shows that you don't like. It would be real. It'd be honest. But I also know it's not the person you want to be, and it doesn't bring the best out of you. So here's a few symptoms. I've run across these personally, and it's easier to spot in other people because that's just how blind spots work. But here's a few symptoms of our cynicism. You assume the worst in others. You assume the worst in others. I'm going to tell you a quick story. I wish this wasn't as recent as it is, but it's really embarrassing. It's a personal story, so let's just keep it between the few thousand of us. That'd be awesome. It was the other day I got done speaking, and after I get done speaking, there's usually two groups of people that'll come say something. It's people who it's like, hey, God is moving. They want prayer. They just be encouraging. It's so sweet. I love that. And then there's the other people who walk up with an angry face, and the only way to describe it is they look like, I want to talk to the manager, right? They're just got something. And I remember coming down to the front. I was talking to a few people, and this gal came busting down the aisle straight at me with the I want to talk to a manager face. And she was just angry. She was just looked frustrated. And I was like, can I run? Can I run? No, there's nowhere to go. And she walks right up to me. She looks me right in the face. She says, where's Dave? And I wanted to be like, hiding from you. Like, what are you talking about? Like, golly, I'm Lance, nice to meet you. Like, and she was just upset, and then she looks at me. She's like, I can't make this up. I already knew where this is gonna go. I'm like, okay, what is it? Worship's too loud, pants are too tight, what did I say wrong? Like, what, just give me the things. At least you didn't write it on an anonymous card this time. Those are always fun. But like, just like, tell me what your plight is. Tell me the problem. She looks at me and says, I really wanted Dave to be here. I wanted to tell him how much his message last week meant to my family. And I'm like, tell your face that. Like, what are you doing? But isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing that you just been through enough things enough times and you start to believe the worst in other people? I don't know what it looks like for you, but for me, it comes up all the time where I just start to assume, okay, here we go. Let's do the thing. You be rude. I'll just try and hold it back, like whatever. Okay. But it's amazing what God can do when he just opens up, steps back sometimes and realizes, golly, why am I believing the worst in everyone around me? The next one is this. You dismiss the spiritual things as naive. You dismiss them as naive. You say, yeah, you're playing for your family or your kids, but that's just wishful thinking. That's just you being hopeful. You might as well meditate on it. It doesn't really make any difference. Yeah, you got in a group and you're trying to meet new people, but let's be honest, it doesn't really do anything. I know the church talks about community and family, but it's just a big organization, just a big corporate thing. You take the idea of like giving back, putting God first in your finances, and you're like, oh, come on, what a trite idea. The church just wants something from you. They don't want anything for you. They're just trying to keep the lights on, so they try and manufacture biblical principles to get across their own agenda. I understand, but as soon as we start to dismiss the spiritual things that are naive, we miss out on something for ourselves. You start to, this is one of my favorites, you make self-preservation the priority because you've experienced a lot. It makes sense. The enthusiasm and optimism of your teens and 20s turns into the realism of your 30s, turns into really the cynicism of your 40s, 50s, and 60s, doesn't it? You see yourself start to swing as you experience more life. And so over time, you just start putting up these walls. You start to make understandable assertions like, yeah, I'm just not gonna trust people anymore. They're just gonna end up doing the same thing that they've always done. These new dialogues start in you that the more I give out, the less I get back. You've trusted enough people and it doesn't work. Come on, by the time you hit 40, you've seen enough of your friends and colleagues get married and divorced multiple times. Maybe you've experienced that, so you're thinking, love, that's just a fantasy at this point. You've seen enough people make decisions to train wreck their lives. You're thinking, what are we even doing here anymore? And naturally, you start to get a bit defensive. You start to play defense more than offense. And let me just tell you, in sports, defense wins championships. But in relationships, it's awful. In relationships, defensiveness helps nobody. It keeps the people that care about you at an arm's length. It keeps you distant and removed, and that's not what any of us set out for in our relationships. But it's what cynicism can do. And the last one is this. You stop trusting that God can or will move. You stop trusting that God can or will move. You just decide, okay, I'm done with that. And if I'm gonna be honest with you, church, I've been there before. At 22 years old is when I first got a job in ministry, and that was never my plan for life. It wasn't my goal. I wanted to be a physical therapist, and maybe wanted to be a teacher. Just didn't think anything about ministry, and God in just an amazing way took hold of my life and shifted me in the direction of ministry. I thought like, man, what a better job could there be? I get to figure out creative ways to dispense hope to people. Like, what a dream. I get to work along and with people who have the same values and faith as me. I mean, this is great. You suckers are stuck at Microsoft. Well, I get to do this. This is the best. And so I remember being 22, ready to take on the world. I was going to take on hell with a water pistol. You know what I mean? Like I had enough faith. I could get a cat excited to be water baptized. Like I could do anything. Like I was ready. And I remember seeing people who were old down the road who were like 40. and they started to have like this cynicism, like, don't you realize the best job ever? Don't you realize this is incredible? And I don't know what it is. The more you attend services, I don't know if you've been to a lot of church services before. At this point, I've been to quite a few. I've heard a lot of talks. I love listening to talks, I love communicators, whether it's a comedian, whether it's a TED Talk, and I listen to a lot of messages. And I've just heard enough. And if I'm being honest, at some point, it's like, okay, yeah, David and Goliath, we're doing that today? Okay, great. I know where this goes. Yeah, okay, yeah, well, let's go slay some giants. But no one ever slays a giant. I know where it goes. Okay, there's a lot of hope in that. That's great, it's great. And I got to get a little bit cynical, even in my own heart. And I'll never forget, I had the opportunity to speak at a great church, a large church, and I loved the message that I was going to do. I was sitting right up towards the front, the band was playing, and just this idea that came across my heart. And sometimes you control them, sometimes you can't. It's just this idea. It's like, well, yeah, does it even matter? Is what I'm going to say even make a difference? Does this do anything? Am I even helping? In a way that's going to be hard to describe for some of you. This won't make sense. For some of you, it will. I'll call it God's Spirit spoke to me. His Holy Spirit just nudged it. It sounded like my own voice. It wasn't an audible voice, but it was my own voice, just smarter. And it pushed back against this narrative. And in a really blunt way, I just felt God say, you're right. What you say, and if this is all about you and what you communicate, it doesn't really matter. But it's never been about you and what you communicate. It's what I'm doing through you. And your cynical heart has started to doubt the fact that I can still move. Your cynical heart has started to question whether or not I can still move in people's lives. And the Bible verse that came to my heart is God will use the foolish things of this world to confound the wise. And he said, I will even use someone as foolish as you to accomplish my mission. Just get up there and do it. And do it with some faith. Set aside your cynical heart. Because at some point, a symptom for me is that I stopped believing that God could or would do anything anymore. And I don't want to be in that place anymore. If I take my hands off the wheel, that's where I'll drift. But it's a blind spot. So I have to stay engaged. And the reason that I wanted to speak this to this incredible church, to you guys, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because cynicism is the most problematic for people who are educated, for people who have experienced things, people with a treasure trove of life and wisdom. Because this is what happens. Cynicism feels like wisdom, but it lacks discernment. It feels like, I'm just making a smart choice. It feels like I'm using my past to inform my future, and that's helpful in so many ways. You're great employees because of that. You're great managers because of that. But if you don't use discernment, if you don't allow God to speak into every idea that you have, well, you might hit yourself to some ideas God never intended for you. And you might get a cynical heart, even though God is still able to move. I want to finish up with where Thomas ended his journey here. 8 days later, the disciples are gathered together again. Jesus shows up. And this time, Thomas was with them. The doors were locked, and suddenly, as before, Jesus was standing amongst them. He had to calm them down because that's a bit disconcerting, so he said, peace be with you. And then he said to Thomas, he just laser focused right on Thomas. He just went right to him, forget everybody else. He said, Thomas, put your fingers here and look at my hands. Put your hand into the wound on my side. Don't be faithless any longer, but believe. Thomas, belief and faith was your greatest asset, and if you let it turn into cynicism, would you believe once more? In church, I just want to tell you again, I don't know who I'm speaking to. Faith, belief, and trust was your biggest asset, but you have let it turn into cynicism, and let me just tell you, maybe it's time to be faithless no more and believe again. To believe that God is able to do immeasurably more than we could ever ask or imagine. Based on Jesus showing up to Thomas, Thomas switches back because you are not hopeless and neither was he. And he makes the greatest personal declaration of faith, maybe in the Bible. My Lord and my God. He said, you are my Lord and you are my God because you can continue to do more than I thought was possible. Church, today, I don't know where cynicism has overshadowed and eclipsed your faith, but today, maybe we just sing the song that we sang in the beginning. Maybe you lip synced it. Maybe you just read the words. Maybe you just thought it was a good sentiment, but it's biblical and it's true. We sang a song that God is more than able. That who am I to deny what the Lord can do? Who am I? Who am I in my understanding to deny what the Lord could do? Because what the Bible teaches us is God's ways are higher than my ways. His thoughts are higher than my thoughts. That he might be up to something that you never thought or imagined, and maybe today could stoke the fire of your belief once more. You walk out of this room not with the shadow of cynicism over your life, but believing that God could be up to something in your life, in your marriage, in your mental health, with your kids, in your work, with your purpose. I don't know what it is, but God does. So I asked the band if we could reprise that song one more time, just sing it together, and maybe believe in faith for the first time, or first time in a really long time, that God is still able. Would you stand to your feet with me? I want to pray for you, and then we're going to sing. Bow your head and close your eyes. I'm going to pray over you. Heavenly Father, I pray a blessing over every person who hears this, whether they are online, whether they're driving their car later this week on a podcast, maybe they are here in the room with me in Redmond. Right now, you know every single one of us has the seeds of cynicism in our life. And it has bloomed, it has taken root, and has developed in different ways. But right now, would you begin to uproot the cynicism that we have and be reminded that you are still working, that you are still able, you are still capable, and God, we are so grateful for that. Today, we don't quit. We don't give up. History and life has taught us a lot, but listen, our cynicism towards people will not pollute our cynicism towards you. Our disappointment with the behaviors of others will not pollute our worthiness of praise for you. So Heavenly Father, today, let us be encouraged. Let us be hopeful. Let us trust. Let us believe once more. Let us see that you are still able. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.